When large jobs require moving massive amounts of snow, get the work done quickly and efficiently with the Western Pile Driver and all-new Pile Driver XL pusher plows, both featuring Trace Edge technology. These pushers scrape down to the pavement with an advanced cutting-edge system that has independent 2-foot sections that move vertically, oscillate, and trip. Get more jobs done faster with the Western Pile Driver lineup of pusher plows.
Mike Bott from Frost Solutions, one of the owners of the company. What we do is provide a mini weather station to give you a tailored forecast to those particular locations so you know where and when and what to do in those parts of town. You know there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that people can experience tremendous value having a technology like this.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey with your host, Dave Westcott. The Entrepreneurial Journey is a weekly podcast that streams live every Tuesday at 9:15 a.m. Pacific on Dave's YouTube channel and LinkedIn profile. Now here's Dave with this week's episode.
Good morning and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey. I'm your host, Dave Westcott, and I've got with me special guest Jeff Hill, president and founder of the RePurpose Center, franchise owner of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Morning, brother. How are we doing?
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. How have you been?
I've been good. Trying to keep up with life and the pace, and been enjoying watching you from afar. So happy to be here. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. This is one that I've been looking forward to. Plus, I always love having a guest in studio.
Yeah.
Right. It's a lot more fun in studio. You get a better connection. You get a lot of fun. So, RePurpose Center, you've got a lot going on. I see, online, you got the Hill Posses moving around, having fun. Franchise owner, 1-800-GOT-JUNK, RePurpose Center. What's happening in your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, right now, I kind of cut my teeth in entrepreneurialism with 1-800-GOT-JUNK, as you know. Started franchise here in the Bothell, Bellevue area back in 2003, and we've grown that over the years. And about 8 years into it, I brought a partner in because I was not necessarily wanted to be a junk guy for my whole life, and so I brought in an operating partner. Actually sold 55% of my business, so okay. I'm a minority owner of that business now at 45%, and then went back to my original background, which was the call center business. So I bounced kind of back and forth. Some of it was health related, some of it was just interest and drive and where we were with our family and whatnot. And so, but for the last few years, it's been really interesting in our business, particularly in the junk businesses. There's been a real emphasis and a real interest in the recycling side, and just to paint a little picture, back in 2003 when I first started, all people wanted me to do was come pick up the junk. We put a little bit of a spin on the industry. If you know the 1-800-GOT-JUNK story, it was, branded trucks, uniformed drivers, on-time service, do the sweep up after, all the stuff that the traditional Sanford and Son wasn't really known for. And so that was enough to kind of hit the ground running, and we built a pretty successful business before the first downturn, and for us in around 2008, 2009, and that was eye-opening for me. I was really I'm a skier, so I call it over your skis. We had lots of leases, lots of trucks, lots going on. I just acquired a couple of the neighboring franchises, and then overnight the downturn kind of showed up, and on top of that, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer.
Oh, geez.
And being self-insured and all that stuff. It was tricky for a while there, and so I partnered up, and Ben and I've been just a really complementary partnership through the years, and I've gone off and done a couple other ventures, but more recently I came back into the business, and one of the reasons was COVID. I was out selling, and I was doing some call center work overseas, and COVID hit, and it was a little bit tricky because one, I was working for my mentor. 2, I was a traveling salesman. No one was traveling. 3, no one was buying anything. And so it was just a weird situation. And so I had accelerated my retirement out of that business. mostly out of a favor to my mentor, to be honest, because I couldn't see being on his payroll during all that time. And so I accelerated that I guess I was about 48, and then decided to come back in the business just to put a face to it. My business partner is an absentee owner, so he's based out of Portland. He also runs San Diego, 1-800 Got Junk. And so because I'm local, because we'd reached enough scale, and I'm pretty involved with my community and whatnot, and the entrepreneurial community, it just made sense to kind of come back in a little bit more to the day-to-day. But during that time, we had been experimenting, and not really experimenting, but really trying to make the recycling side a little bit more robust than it had been historically. So kind of going back to where I was originally going with it, used to be we'd go out, we'd send 2 guys out in a truck, we'd pick up the junk as quickly as we could get the junk to the landfill. We would do it. We'd recycle what we could, the quick metal, the cardboard, stuff like that. But everything else would just go in the landfill, and that never really sat right with me. So for about the last probably 10 or 15 years, we've been playing with ways to try to keep as much of that out of the landfill as we can. We've done some resale operations. We've done some bulk recycling, a lot of partnerships. And so about 2 years ago, my partner and I sat down and said, what if we made the recycling portion of the business its own standalone business? And so that's what we're doing. And that's what RePurpose Center is. RePurpose Center is basically, the idea that if 1-800 Got Junk is responsible for the junk acquisition, the labor, get in front of people, and we acquire the junk. And what they want to do is get as much junk as they can, as quick as they can, and get it off their trucks. So as soon as it hits their trucks, it becomes a property of 1-800 Got Junk. 1-800 Got Junk then partners with RePurpose Center, which is responsible for 100% of the diversion for Western Washington's largest junk removal company. That's my business idea. And so we've been doing that, leveraging our existing locations. I have 5 kind of regional facilities that I launch my teams out of, Arlington all the way down south to Olympia, Tacoma, Woodinville. So we're kind of, and then we have a remote Gig Harbor place. And kind of the thought process is, if we really start to double down on that and build some partnerships. We had been dealing with the recycling portion mostly regionally, and I thought if I look at it, or not regionally, mostly really hyper locally, where the Arlington branch has a great relationship with Habitat for Humanity. So that's one of the partnerships we would push. But maybe I'm not working with Habitat for Humanity down in Tacoma. And so I was like, what if we started looking at it regionally? And I started maybe sharing goods and services where it made sense financially, and passing stuff back and forth, and develop some more robust partnerships. Because recycling's, it's a tricky business. Like, I can come into, let's say, well, I'll give you a real life example. We love to help charities. We get a lot of junk, and it's silly that they're going out and buying stuff that I'd be throwing away. And so if I can connect those dots, we like to do it. And so we were doing, I'd asked my wife to find a charity that she cared about, and let's do a test and see what kind of material we could present for them. So she did some research and went to a animal shelter. South King County Cats was the actual animal shelter she went to. We're big pet fans. And so she asked them what type of stuff they need when people donate. Of course, they said money. And we said, well, besides money, what kind of stuff do you buy with that money? And they're like, well, to be honest, we buy a lot of towels. We buy a lot of cages. We buy a lot of carrying cases. These are all things that if an animal is being rehoused, usually they need security, they need dry, they need, and so they painted a nice picture for us, and we're like, cool, we'll be back in 2 weeks. So we went back to the shop, put the word out with all my general managers, and said, pet cages, towels, carriers, put them in a bin, call me when we have a truckload. They called me a week and a half later. I show up with the truck, load the stuff up, take it down to the charity, inundate the charity with all this stuff. They're elated. They call me 2 days later and tell me, we had so many that we called 2 other charities we work with, and we spun those off, and now that partnership is born. So every quarter we go drop off a truckload of stuff. They work with 3 charities, and they get that stuff out. So now the trick is, for me, I can't have pet cages. I can't be storing pet cages all the time. So I got to be able to get rid of
right. You got to move
stuff. And within that scenario I just shared is the challenge, which is a lot of times somebody just wants 2 pet cages. They don't want 30, and I show up with 30, and then I'm still collecting them. So I gotta get partners or multiple partners.
Right.
So when they fill up, I can go to the next ones. And so anyway, that's maybe a little in the weeds about what the business is, but it's exciting and it's fun because it's not just working with entrepreneurs who have a B2B relationship. It's working with nonprofits. We're working with, 2 weeks from now, we're hosting a big garage sale event for my son's robotics team, to help them do a fundraiser event where we can put part of the proceeds toward their toward their event. And so we're doing a lot of that stuff. And then we're also trying to look for the big partners. Like I just partnered with Nick Huzar, the founder of OfferUp, on a venture called Gone, which is higher end recycled furniture. So we're getting that stuff to them because I don't have a place to house it. I don't have, it costs a lot to truck it around and do all this stuff. And we don't want it in the landfill. We don't want the antiques getting smashed up. So we do a trade situation where I get it to them and then they give me a commission on what they can sell, which allows us to pass this stuff back and forth. And so we're trying to build more partnerships like that.
There's an economic benefit to it as well, right?
Huge.
Like if I don't have to take all of the cages to the dump, I paid less dump fees.
$200 a ton.
That's right.
Is what we're paying for dumps.
I made a little bit more money.
So it just, if we're talking to entrepreneurs on this show, so I'll share a little bit more of the details of the model. Let's say hypothetically, which isn't so hypothetical, we spend about $1 million in dumps every year.
Okay.
So if I can cut my dumps in half, I'm only spending $500,000. So if with that, I cut my dumps in half and I can make a little bit of revenue, all of a sudden now, maybe I have a business that's making $500,000, but I'm also saving $500,000 on this.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the cash back card, right? I just put my Spark card in and got my 2% back. But you just, instead of doing, a check for $300, you're getting a check for $500,000.
Yeah. So
that's some cream right there.
Yeah. Well, that's, the vision is, for me to do 100% offset of net zero dumps is what I'm going for.
Wow.
And to give you an idea, system-wide, most junk removal companies spend probably 10 to 15% on dumps.
Sure.
We've gotten ours down to around 9%, so we're above the system average. My best of the 5 that I was telling you about, my best region out of Arlington, right over here.
Yeah.
They're 3% dumps.
Wow.
Because of their resale operation. Because they have a great weekend garage sale. If you ever go over there, you should go over there. It's like
I'm going to do it, man.
They get the fire pit going. They get the music going. They get everybody in the community coming through. We got some old retired Boeing guys that stage during the week of some of the material that we pick up. And then, and so it's kind of proven the model for me where it's like, okay, if I can get that 9% down to 4.5%, I just saved,
a lot of money.
Yes. And the cool thing is it's circularity, right? This is what we're talking about when we're talking about being sustainable is to, the goods that are coming in, they're not built as good as they used to be, but there's still value there, right? Yeah. And so
absolutely.
And unfortunately recycling is just so tricky because the margins are really tight and it takes so many hands to do this stuff. And so so my vision is we just do completely as much as possible do it partner run. And of course I can lean on my junk team. There's some handoff that needs to happen anyway because they're I'm doing them a big favor,
Right.
But each of these handoffs needs to work for each entity. And so that's kind of where I'm spending my days.
That's awesome, man. So you got to be about 28 years old roughly when you get into junk, right? You decide you're going to get into junk. You're picking up the Bothell location, or maybe you're starting fresh in Bothell or whatever it is. You're 28 years old. What is it about buying a franchise at that age that's like, this is what I'm doing? What is it that spoke to you?
Well, the short answer is I think I probably have always been an entrepreneur. I just didn't know it. But I'll dive into that a little bit. So I came over from Spokane and I moved over at 26 and a half and went to work for a company called Western Wireless.
Okay.
And Western Wireless became a company called VoiceStream, and VoiceStream became a company called T-Mobile. And so I was with them through all that. So when I was with Western Wireless, I was on a team of about 20 doing financial services calls for Cellular One and VoiceStream. And so when they decided to spin off VoiceStream, they're like, hey, Jeff, you've got some talent. You're a natural leader. We'd love for you to lead the the financial services team for VoiceStream. And so I took 12 people with me, small team. We built the department, and it was like hyper growth, right? And so over the course of 6 years, I went from having one manager, a team of 12 to, the financial services department when I left was like 2,000, right?
Okay.
Because we had call centers under us and all this stuff. And so
this is about 2000.
Yeah, right around there.
Okay.
And so I think I started working for the company in 97, and by 2000, I'd been promoted up through, and I went from, literally on the phones to supervisor, manager, director, kind of up through. And I liked that ride, but what I really liked was when we were that small team. I'm a fan of being the CEO and the janitor. That's just that's the way that I am, because
the CEO and the janitor, I like that.
Well, that's just the way that I am. I'm not a guy that wants to sit around and just bark orders at people. I get my hands dirty.
I love that about you.
But I did notice that I had a natural skill for, helping people be on the right seats on the bus. You know what I mean? And so I could sometimes see something in someone maybe that they didn't see in themselves. And so that was something that I've always kind of tried to lean into. So fast forward, I guess about 6 years with T-Mobile. We went through a bunch of transition, all this crazy hyper growth. We were going through a round of layoffs as one does, and as a director, I get to watch all this happen, and it wasn't fun. These were people that I had taken under my wing, and now I'm having to let someone go. And so basically one day, my manager came to me and was going to, or my, I guess, vice president came to me and was going to reorg me, which wasn't unusual. I was one of those guys they'd put on a team, I'd build the team, and then they'd take the team away. And that was, kind of got over being upset by that. But this one was weird because they wanted me to be an interim senior manager. I'm like, I was one of the youngest directors that they had. And so I was like, am I getting a demotion? And so I just basically said, that severance package you had me give my senior manager, you give me one of those, I'm out of here. And so I negotiated a severance package, and they gave it to me, and part of it was ego. Yeah. And part of it was I worked hard for where I was, and I had to stand up for what was right. And then the other part of me was like, I was ready for a change. I was ready to maybe try to do something on my own. And
so you see junk.
So I had a severance package, thought about moving to Mexico, becoming an expat, had friends in Canada, was looking in Canada, and all of a sudden this is no joke. It's like 2 a.m. I'm looking at job postings in Vancouver, BC, and I see Brian Scudamore, the guy who founded 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and I see it all in the background. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, let me learn about this call center. I start researching it, and I find out this call center had just won a Call Center of the Year award and all this stuff. And I'm like, what? This is a junk company. American Express wins Call Center of the Year. 1-800-GOT-JUNK doesn't win Call Center of the Year. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And so I was intrigued. And so I went up there to interview for the job, and I left with a franchise, basically. So I went up there, met with Scudamore, met with their CEO at the time, ended up interviewing in a really kind of a progressive reverse panel interview with other candidates and all this stuff. And at the end of it, they're just like, Jeff, we think you'd be probably not quite as challenged as you needed to be running our call center, because it was a 30-person call center. I'd been running, full 500-person call centers. But they said, we think you'd be ideal for this. And our partner in Seattle is having trouble getting finances for trucks, because he was a Canadian guy that came down, because it's a Canadian-based company. And he was happy in West Seattle and just busy. And so they just bought back the east side of Seattle, and they offered it to me. So I kind of backdoored into it, and I'm like, this is Bill Gates territory. So I'm like, I know there's good junk there. So I started, went and bought, before I knew where it was going, I spent my severance package on a junk truck, and started in the trucks.
Wow. So you started in the trucks. You got one truck on the road? Yeah.
Well, I started with one, ordered the second one pretty much right away, thinking to start to get some business going. And I think it was in the trucks full time for the first, 4 to 6 months, and then kind of started working myself out and managing, and we grew from 2 trucks that first year to, I think, 4 the next. And then
how many trucks are in your fleet now across your?
So we probably have about 50 trucks in our fleet. 10 of them have been decommissioned and painted black, and they're now just recycling trucks,
Sure.
metal trucks, things like that. And yeah, so we have about, we feel like we have a nice sweet spot when we're around 100 employees.
Yeah.
You get much bigger than that, it starts to get complicated. And yeah, we got nice little operation. Our primary hub is right just down the road out of Woodinville, and then we have another kind of a strategic location that we own in Tacoma.
Okay.
And then some of the other stuff's just small arrangements, satellite shops, stuff like that.
Sure.
But,
And you guys run something out of Portland, and you run down into California as well.
yeah, so that's as a franchise. Ben was an early adopter over in Portland East in San Diego. I started the Bellevue, and then I acquired Tacoma, and then through the years I bought Bellingham, Olympia. Just the mom and pop guys that were wanting to get out. I bought them up, and because what I learned earlier is the bigger the franchise, the more cream that I could find. When business isn't that good, you have a bigger population, you have more to draw from, and
Yeah.
Junk's
Absolutely.
you've been in some interesting businesses. Junk's a very interesting business. It's directly tied to like moving, and when you think about moving, everybody moves. On average, everybody moves every couple of years, or maybe every 5 years. So 20% of the population moves every year. You just don't know which 20%. So you got to advertise to all of them,
Yeah.
And so that's what junk is. Everybody's got junk, but
Right.
typically it's a life event that causes them to need to move the junk, or to, they build a deck, or they got to downsize the house, or they do whatever. They're dealing with family member downsizing, those things that are life, And so, yeah, it's an interesting business. It's been a lot of learning, a lot of fun, but it's kind of fun for me to be able to pivot in some other stuff too.
Yeah, I love what you're doing with the the RePurpose Center. I think that's pretty cool. So you're going on your entrepreneurial journey. You hit 08, 09. You get into a little bit of trouble, or maybe not a little bit of trouble, but things aren't going the right way.
Oh, a lot of trouble.
Let's
call it what it was. It was tough.
You bring on a partner.
Yeah.
What was that like? Because you hear the horror stories of, oh my God, I brought on a partner and it was the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
I hate partnerships. But for you, it seems like it's been a happy marriage.
Yeah. I went in pretty open-eyed to it. I had run just right out of college. I skipped over a couple of my really first entrepreneurial things, but right out of college, I graduated from Eastern Washington University in what was it, early 90s, and it wasn't the best time to graduate and get a job. And I went and spent a few months selling high interest loans to Sears or to Ford Motor Credit, and that wasn't really my bag. And so the whole time I was dreaming about doing my own thing. And so I actually, my first business, I actually sold I took lost luggage for airlines. So when my first client was Alaska Airlines, when Alaska Airlines would go from Seattle to Spokane and then lose someone's luggage in the practice, when the luggage came in, I would then load it in my car and then deliver it to their house. And I'd charge like a taxi depending on how far it had to go or whatever.
No kidding.
But I started that business with a partner and a great friend of mine. And probably 3/4 of the way through the first year, my partner got bored and jumped, and I was stuck in the middle of what was going to be the busy season, right? The winter, when all the disconnects happen or whatever. And so that was my first taste of having a business partner, and I wasn't super stoked about how that went. But yeah, when the opportunity to partner with Ben came around, it simmered for about a year. He'd offered to buy my business a year prior to when I actually did it. And I just wasn't ready. I was like, I don't know if I need help, or, I definitely wanted to recapitalize my business. And so one shortcut away to do that is to bring on a partner. But then I'm also like, do I need to just get small again? Do I need to start over? Like, what's the best approach? And so, knowing Ben, we'd been part of our own little business group we developed of other franchise partners that were all trying to next level their businesses. And I really liked his thought process, really complementary to mine. I'm more of a little bit more gregarious and kind of in your face, high energy, that type of thing. And Ben is a lot more methodical, kind of an economics background or whatever. And so when we partnered up, and, you know, the first thing Ben said to me when we were sitting down to talk about terms is he just said, you know, good contracts make good friends. So let's just sit down and talk through everything and figure out exactly how we want to manage things. And we did some things that, that I didn't do the first time, but, you know, one thing is anytime either of us is working in the business, you know, if there's value being provided, we need to be compensated somehow. So it's not fair for him to be working in the business and me not to be, and him not being get paid, you know? And so we would always, if he's going to be, let's say he's going to be the president and he's the operating manager overseeing the business, he's going to get a compensation for that. And then anything left over is what we split. And so then when I came back in the business, okay, I'm working again, I can draw a salary again. And so we've always managed to be, I think, really fair with each other. And yeah, I would say, what are we, 15 years into our partnership, and just been really, really aligned there.
That's impressive.
And you know, and I'm and I think the complimentary part is, you know, I'll push him on some things and then you know, and back and forth. And so it's been really good.
I love that good contracts make good friends. I think that's a powerful line for anybody in the audience listening today. Like, good contracts make good friends. And I like how you talked it through. It wasn't just a piece of paper that was emailed over and said, sign this or else, right? It was like, hey, let's work through this. Let's build relationship. I think that's really good stuff, man. That's good for any entrepreneur out there, because you hear the horror stories of having a partner, and you see so many people where a partnership goes wrong. But what I hear is that we're setting expectations, right? Like, if you and I are going to play Monopoly together and you tell me, hey man, you don't get $200 when you pass go, I'm going to throw the board at you, right? I'm like, you cheater, right? But if we establish that rule before the game starts, we're probably okay, or we don't play, right? So I love how you really worked that into your business. Now, you and I met through EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, right? For any of you not out there, EO, it's a great place for entrepreneurs to connect. Networking is so important. What has networking done for your entrepreneurial journey?
You know, EO was probably one of the single best decisions I made. And I'll tell you why, is I did it right during that downtime that we were talking about. During that, I think I joined EO probably in 07. Yep. By 08, things were starting to look a little bit shady. By 09, you know, I was in a full-blown panic with how things were going. Like I said, I don't know whether it was on this or prior to our call or prior to our talk, but when I first started with the downturn, that first year in 08, I grew 60%. And so, I mean, you know, I got no problems. We'll be good. You know, let's double down, whatever, you know.
Yep. I've been there, by the way.
But if you know, because you do business on both sides of the coast, but you know, East Coast and West Coast were a little different. And back then it hit the East Coast a lot sooner than it hit the West Coast. And so 08, I did well. 09, it really started to hit me. And then on top of that, some health issues. On top of that, you know, some other things were going on. And so it was really tricky. And so, before I partnered up, I actually I brought in another business that was somewhat complementary to mine, partnered up with a guy named Doug Burgoyne. Doug's since passed, but he started a company called Frogbox, and it was on a show called Dragon's Den, which is
Frogbox. I know that,
yeah. So we started Frogbox, and I brought that to the U.S. As another kind of franchise model. We got thrust into the franchise world because he was on Dragon's Den, and he sold it to some dragons, which is like Shark Tank for those in the U.S. And so that was interesting and exciting and whatnot. But at the end of the day, that model, it was a tough model. It was sustainable moving supplies, which totally believe in the concept. You know, is the idea of, instead of cardboard boxes, you deliver plastic totes. People pack and move, and then you pick up the plastic totes when you're done. And so you basically renting them. But the challenge with that model was you'd have to take it to their place, and then you have to pick it up. And so that's a lot of windshield time. It's a lot of back and forth. And then you got to clean the boxes and all the labor that was involved. And so I labored with that for quite some time. But ultimately decided the junk was where it was at. We really decided to double down on it. I brought Ben in as the operating partner. Strategically, he wanted to buy the whole thing. He would have bought the whole thing. I worked too hard. I was 8 years into the business, watching my life flash in front of me, not stoked about being a junk guy, but also not wanting to throw away everything I'd built. And so after a lot of negotiations, I said, I'll sell you the majority share, but it's only going to be 55%.
So you're 35, 36. Do you have kids at this time or no?
So trying to remember the way I found out I had testicular cancer. And the only reason I found out I had it was because I was trying to have my first son. And so, so again, I'm an optimist, and so I can look at a lot of this stuff, and you could pick holes in it, but at the end of the day, it all happens for a reason, you know. And my son's named Hunter. Okay, and he's named Hunter for a reason because, you know, without him, I wouldn't have found out I had cancer. I mean, why would I have ever gone to a urologist at 36? There's no way, you know. But everything kind of happens for a reason, and so he came into our life around then, and then 2 years later we had 2 more, and that book ended. So I had twins, and so I have 3 boys, and just really enjoying that ride, and it all happened kind of one after the other during the craziest time of my life. We walked away from a house during that time. It cut deep. But going back to the networking piece, I had this group of entrepreneurs who have been there, who have failed and succeeded in business. And so when I sat down with them and said, what do I do? At that point, if you would ask me, I would have paid somebody money to walk away from my business. I mean, that's how desperate I felt. But this group of entrepreneurs, particularly my forum, really helped me walk through, where I was at, what I really had, where the opportunity lie, what I wanted to do, all that stuff. And just the idea of having people that you could talk real plainly with, a lot of times as a CEO of a business or as a founder, there's not a lot of people you can talk to. They're necessarily on your level, and your employees are like, really, you're going to complain about things, because all they see is the bottom, or they see how much the invoice is.
Look
not
at your car. What are you talking about? You just drove up in a Maserati.
Yeah, exactly. So,
that's what they're thinking, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so EO was great that way, and really helped me make some good kind of thoughtful decisions through the years. And anytime I ever had have real tough, I'm not. I've had a couple runs with them. I'm not part of EO, but I have my regular EO folks that I meet with regularly. We still do breakfasts, and and honestly, with this new venture, and then we'll see where the stuff with Gone goes. But I may end up jumping back in for a little bit.
Yeah. No, that's good, man. So, your ride, I want to say, like, everybody looks at the entrepreneur and, it's like if I look at you or if you look at me, maybe you see us on social media or you see us in EO or you see us whatever, like you can think like, oh my God, these guys, these entrepreneurs, they make so much money. Their life is so easy. They've got it all. Everything just falls into place for them. They are so lucky. Mm-hmm. Everything just works out. But that's not the truth. Right?
No, I don't think so.
It's lots of hard work.
Yeah. And you're never out of the woods.
You're never out of the woods.
I mean, right now I'm coming off of I'm 22 years in business. I'm coming off of a long winter, a wet winter. We're ready. I'm ready for some spring cleaning to happen in the Pacific Northwest. Let's go. I got trucks that are waiting. I got staff that's on, trained, ready to go. And so, and then 22 years later, I'm still, you wait for the phones to ring. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to have customers to do stuff for. And it's a journey, but it's also just it's an opportunity. I love it. I love problem solving. Mm-hmm. I like, I'm a particular fan of win-wins. Mm-hmm. If I can help somebody, the junk business is a good example. I'm giving people their space back. I'm solving their problems. Yep. I mean, when if you've ever been on a hoard or to a hoarder house, mm-hmm. these people,
I've seen the show.
Yeah. Well, Hoarders on A&E, I've been on the show like 10 times, right? My crew, I think, has the privilege of being the team that's been on that show the most, because Screaming Flea Productions was based out of Seattle. And so they love to find local stuff. Right. And so, and that's I don't want to use the term crazy, but it's a until you've been there and seen it, and the helplessness that family is dealing with. But when we can come in and apply my skills of breaking things down into small pieces, saying this is what needs to happen, this is how we're going to approach it, we're going to take care of you, we're not going to steal from you, we're going to find the value in the stuff that has value, but the rest of it we're going to get out, till you really go through that.
It's intense, man.
It's super intense.
It's intense.
Yeah.
I got to tell you this story. So I'm dating this girl. Her name is Cherise. And we're going to Vegas to visit her grandmother. Okay. So we're taking this long drive. We're driving from Seattle to Vegas. We get to her house. I think it's off of Lilywood Avenue, if I still remember it correctly. And it's got to be 11 o'clock at night. We have literally probably driven so many hours. It's crazy. And this is, 20 some years ago at this point. But we get to the house and we go in, and it's like nothing I've ever seen. It's a hoarder's house, bro. And the trash is 3.5 feet tall through every single room. And I'm like, oh my God, what is this? We're supposed to stay the night there. So we literally, all I remember is laying down in this bed. There's trash all the way up to the bed, all the way around me. It's disgusting. It smells crazy. And what I remember about that 100% is that I could hear things moving in the trash. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the moving of the things in the trash is what was the worst part of this entire thing. I said, I didn't even sleep that night. I was so nervous. I was so just freaked out of my mind, right?
I could only imagine.
And I said, we're going to a hotel. We are not staying in this house. She's like, this is my grandma. I said, I don't care. This is it. We're done.
Yeah.
We're going to a hotel or we're done.
Yeah. It's something else. We had to it got to a point where we had to decline those for the show, those jobs. We still do those jobs, of course, but for the show, I don't know if you remember, there was Hoarders on A&E, but then there was the other one on the other channel, was like Buried Alive. Or whatever. And so they started doing this compete for the grossest hoard thing just to kind of outdo each other or whatever. And so then it actually got to the point where it was out of scope for our business. Because, I'm not, I was doing the last one we did, it was a family of hoarders. It was over here in Everett. Family of hoarders, and we're doing the job. I won't tell you some of the stuff that leaked on me that I was throwing in, that but there's a freezer that stopped running with all the meat and stuff in it when the power went out, which usually happens during a hoard, usually plumbing or power, because they can't get people into their house. And so I'm literally scooping out rancid meat juice, taking it over and dumping it down a drain. I got city officials looking at me going, what's that there? And I'm like, this is silly. What are we doing here? And then
what are we doing here?
Well, and again, you got to know, I'm doing it to build the brand.
Yeah.
Because I'm not getting paid full price for this stuff. You know, it's a lot easier if I walked in and said, yeah, this would be $100,000 job and give me the money. Sure. I can do this, but no, this was one of the ones where I'm doing it out of the kindness of my heart, trying to build our brand, trying to show TV, people that, right? And so there's some trade-off there or whatever. But the final straw was the 34-year-old son of there was a mom, a dad, a sister, and a brother. The brother was accusing me and my crew of trying to steal stuff. Now, you got to understand what's in these hoards, right? It's cardboard that has mildew on it. We're pulling out.
There's nothing to steal. Even if there's something good, it's not worth stealing.
Yeah.
Look at, what about, so I had an apartment and a building. I own an apartment building, and it was just a small apartment building. It was just 8 units. And I had a tenant die in the unit, and, they came and they removed him. And when you went into the unit, you could not I personally could not step foot in that unit without throwing up. Okay. Yeah. The trash 3-4 feet tall. This gentleman was not using the restroom.
Yeah.
He was peeing in large buckets.
Yeah. Well, you just cued in on the thing that dripped on me when I threw it in there. When I said, what's in this ice chest? He's like, oh, I don't know. It can go. So I pull it up over my head, and all of a sudden liquid drips on me. And I'm like, okay, I know what was in that.
But, I mean,
and I'm looking around at my guys, and I'm like, I'm so glad it didn't happen to one of them. Because the fact that it happened to me
so
makes
that's
it
a good servant leader. You're a good leader right there.
Yes. But anyway, that was my, the interesting thing though, is even with that, I'm in talks right now with a guy named Matt Paxton. Matt has a show on the Discovery Channel called, I think it's called Hidden Treasures or something like that. It just started like a month ago or whatever. But Matt's a buddy of mine that I met on those first jobs from Hoarders back 20 years ago. And he and I've kept in touch, and he's still in this space, and we're doing, so I'm trying to, with his Hidden Treasures business, I'm like, hey, come on up. We'll do RePurpose Center. We'll feature that business and do this. So you may see, him and this. It's just funny how it all kind of comes together. You meet good people, and you hold on to the good ones when you can. And
networking.
Exactly.
Networking is really, really important. So the mission behind the RePurpose Center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we rescue the unwanted, we reignite creativity, and we partner for a greener future together. That's our mission. And what that means is, I believe that for us to be serious about recycling and sustainability in our community, we have to work together. We have to let people do what they're good at. We do what we're good at, share services, share goods, make sure everybody gets a little bit of the upside. And that's what we're trying to do. So, we're pulling lots of folks together. We're trying a lot of stuff. Right now I call it's like a laboratory, we fail quickly, let's try this. Oh, that didn't work. Don't try that again. Let's try this, and so we're trying a bunch of things. I mean, like I said, it's interesting because this stuff at a glance is just junk. It's junk. That's, people pay me because they don't want it anymore. But as you know, if you've ever maybe had a garage sale where you didn't sell everything, some of the stuff's still good, but you didn't sell it. You don't want it. You got to get rid of it. And so sometimes, so people are paying me to get rid of it, or pay my guys to do the labor to get rid of their stuff. And then, I'm taking it a step further, and I'm trying to find partners that can help me divert it.
I love it. I won't say that I've done junk removal nearly on a level that you have ever, but I will say that over the years in business, we've had, the occasional job that comes up once or twice a year where somebody's like, hey, come clean out this house it's just filled with junk, and they want to throw everything away. Mm-hmm. And I would say that, every so often you'll come in there and you'll find a nice house tree, or you'll find a couch, or you'll find a coffee table, or whatever gets this going to the dump. Like, that's good stuff. And at the end of the day, what's going to happen is somebody's going to use that. Yeah. In fact, I was working for Pat Monahan, lead singer of the rock band Train, and he's like, I don't want my treadmill anymore. Yeah. This is a $7,500 treadmill. Mm-hmm. Right? It's in my gym right now. Yeah. I still have it all these years later because to him it was junk. It was a $7,500 treadmill that I think the guy went on twice. Like, it was brand new. Yeah. Yeah. So
and he didn't want it in the landfill. Right. He just wanted to, he's probably taking his lumps like, that was a bad investment for us. It's an expensive coat hanger or whatever. But the fact that he could give it to you, someone who's, publicly working on your fitness journey and stuff like that. I mean, that's a great win, right? Yeah. And to make that easy, like, that's what we're talking about. And when you have the chance to come to my house and look around, I live in a beautiful home. Half the stuff has been repurposed, at least the stuff on my patio, the old Costco tables, and,
I love all that.
Yeah, totally. And then, I have a thing for Adirondacks. So I got a 4-acre trail system back through my back property, and I got some little Adirondack sitting areas and things, and it's all stuff that was bound for the landfill.
I would love to take a walk down there. You know what I want to build out in my fields. We're getting totally off topic, but what I want to build is a labyrinth. They're these big gardens, right?
Yeah,
that kind of
with the spinnings. Yeah, totally.
And so I planted my first row of trees around the perimeter, and I'm but I have this idea of like putting benches in there to sit and put, an edible garden and, like, I don't know, I'm getting ahead of myself, but
I thought you were going to say dirt bikes because we could do that too.
I love the idea of dirt bikes too. I'm actually torn between the dirt bikes because I
come see my property. I designed it so my kids could practice riding bikes and dirt bikes on it or whatever. They don't do it. I spend more time in my back area, but it's great because now we have kind of a young growth forest, but now those trees have all grown. But I'd cut enough trails that it's like walking through Mount Rainier. Like
how many acres are you on?
I'm on 5 acres, but 4 of it's just kind of undeveloped, and so I got back there with my tractor just so I could access it.
Okay, I gotta come see this. Yeah. I gotta come see this. I'm excited to do that. All right, so I got 2 final questions for you before we bring this thing in for a landing. Number one tip that you'd give to any entrepreneur, any CEO, anybody in business, anybody looking to start business. What is the advice that you give them today?
Wow, that's a big question. Well, I mean, I think the simplest thing we talked about earlier, which is it's not for the faint-hearted. There's been many a time where I've had a friend come to me and say, hey, I'm thinking about starting up a coffee shop and make some donuts or something. And the first thing I ask them is, do you like being up at 2 a.m.? And they're like, no, why? I'm like, well, to make donuts, you have to be up at 2 a.m. Like, understand what you're getting into. I think some early lessons for me, just really, you plan for the business. You also have to plan for your life. You also have to live while you're building your business. So making sure you have a decent budget for marketing and mostly for survival. But, the last thing is just, I think everyone has a little bit of I call it a golden thread that follows you through your life. You make one decision, it leads to another, and it leads to another. And just understand that the ups and the downs, the failing, the wins, the losses, those are all part of your journey and what you can learn from them, and the people that stood by you during that time. I mean, those people will serve you well throughout your life. And so I've built a really strong team. It's based on honesty and integrity. And, and so, I got a general manager that, if he told me he needed to sell half my trucks, I'd ask him why and we'd figure it out. But I trust him because he's been working for me for 15 years and he hasn't failed me yet. And so, take care of those that take care of you and you'll be fine. And that's what I try to do.
I love that. Take care of those that take care of you. Final question. We've got a big billboard. Everybody in the world can see it. It's completely blank. You get to put some words on there that mean something to you, something that is your vision, your mission, your values that you share with the world that changes the lives of the people that see it. What do you write on that billboard?
Man, you are deep this morning. I think a few things come to mind. I think we're all just here for a short period. Yeah. And I think we're all caretakers, right? And I think, I think about my life the same way I think about our we have a property in northern New Mexico and that we inherited, and it's beautiful. It's been my wife's family since the 1600s, and we love the property. It's awesome, but it's not super practical for my lifestyle, inheriting a small ranch and,
Sure.
But we have this idea of we're caretakers for this land. We're going to leave it better than we found it. And I think that's what I'm trying to do with business. I started a business selfishly because I wanted to be successful and I didn't want to work that hard. But in the end, like when I leave this industry, hopefully I will have made some really great collaborations that are sustainable, that carry on, that do good things for our community and our environment, and leave it better than I found it. And that's kind of what I'm on a mission to do. I
love it. Caretakers. That's fantastic. So listen, if you're out there in the audience today, and you've got some junk to remove and you're in the area, hit up the 1-800-JUNK guys, right? Like get on the phone. You got that spring cleaning, you're seeing it. 1-800-GOT-JUNK, call them, get it hooked up. and get that nasty stuff out of your house, or get that stuff that you think is nasty that's good that could be blessing to somebody else so it can get repurposed out there. Hit up the junk guys. That's awesome. You're on social media.
Yeah.
Where
Find me
can
on
people see
LinkedIn, Jeff Hill on LinkedIn. You can find me under RePurpose Center, CEO and founder. And then from there, you can find me in a couple other places. I have a YouTube page that I don't promote very well. That's one of the reasons I drove up here to meet you, to see your operation and to see what it's going to take me to next level that piece. But yeah, I'm happy to respond to anybody that wants to connect.
That's right. Get there, connect with Jeff. Great guy. Jeff, thank you for being on the show. This has been absolutely fantastic. I'm your host, Dave Westcott. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, anywhere we're at social. I'm hanging out. We're back 9:15 a.m. Pacific Standard Time every Tuesday. Jeff, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
It's been great. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Mike Bott from Frost Solutions, one of the owners of the company. What we do is provide a mini weather station to give you a tailored forecast to those particular locations so you know where and when and what to do in those parts of town. You know there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that people can experience tremendous value having a technology like this.
Introducing the all-new Western Enforcer V-Plow. Engineered with all the features, efficiency, and performance of full-size Western V-Plows, built specifically for your half-ton truck. For more information, visit westernplows.com.